you don't need any long sheets, so just. When you're all ready, I can start.
You can start.
Okay, cool. All right, Valerie. 3, 2, 1, start time now. The resolution states NATO should enforce a no-fly zone. All right, specifically in the framework. Observation 1: you should be evaluating judges as this through the lens of net benefits. Impacts should be predominantly pre-fiat implications. Good because the state has failed us in the past. This is a reason why traditional debate is bad. Brings us to the second framework where traditional debate is bad. It says forecloses discussion of the other. Basically, bad method of implementation is going to lead to bad policies. So third of all, this leads to spectator mentality where we literally view women getting acid attacks and getting acid attacks as dope uniqueness for our human rights advantage. Is the reason why you should be voting. Reason why we should be viewing our viewing the way that we orient ourselves against others. Second of all, this leads to serial policy here, basically reform without centering or against the patriarchy, only reconstructs the patriarchy. Third of all, root of violence. We're living in a world of pretend, basically permits violent actions. Again, this is the ethic of child marriage, where fathers literally force their daughters to marry, but don't consider the consequences that come after. Four, debate is key. This is a unique space where people have to listen to the problems that are faced in groups hurt by people. Debate is key to marginalized voices, to get access to academic spaces. Little a is safe space. Safe space. Debate is a unique space where debate is able to openly question the questions of supremacy, of patriarchy, and etc. 5, how to evaluate. All theory needs to be weighed via impacts. We define fairness as social and distributive equity. So that brings us to the advocacy. The resolutional analysis, right before the advocacy. Resolution analysis. First of all, the Syrian government is super sexist. Little a is under here, the criminal law article number 548, which provides provides what? Provides higher sentences for quote-unquote honor killings. Little b, Article 489 predicts marital rape. Marital rape, where literally husbands are allowed to commit these horrific crimes against their own wives. Little c, the Article 473 imposes a larger sentence on women than on men who have sex outside of their marriage. Basically, adultery is more biased towards the man than they are in the woman. So that basically brings us to our advocacy. Vote F to affirm the resolution as a starting point to endorse rebellion against the patriarchy. Again, advocacy. Vote F to affirm the resolution as a starting point to endorse rebellion against the patriarchy. Do you guys want a text?
Yeah.
Sharon, can you get that? Okay, so brings us to the advantages. First of all, on war mentality. So you need this right now, right? We need this is happening now. Right now, military experts predict a quote-unquote, there's going to be a required war between Russia and Syria. Lawmakers, little a under this, that lawmakers in the United States basically 2 days ago said, quote-unquote, they're far less interested in the war in the Islamic State and more about the aggression that would result as us implementing a policy that would require no-fly zones. So second of all, the wars uniquely hurt civilians, women in particular. They're not encouraged to join the military or pertain to the military or pertain to things that would help their state. Other than that, they're forcing them to stay at home. They're subjugated more to war crimes when they're forced to stay at home with their children. Little a under this is that U.S. military officials state that most uninvestigated area of oppression are these specific war crimes against these women because there is no checkback for war crimes against humanity in other foreign countries, specifically with these officers. So the number of atrocities are basically not probably unknown and probably air more to the magnitude to the African side. I will get to your questions at the end if I have time. A link here, link 1, the plan passes. We reoriented ourselves to why we even have no-fly zones in the first place. Through our advocacy, we reorient our ways about why specifically how we view these women and civilians are subject to crime. The view that our patriarchy basically perpetuates within the military itself, how we orient ourselves within these civilians, how we don't encourage women to join the military because of all of this, how we force them to stay at home instead. We need to reorient ourselves in order to be able to soften this. The impact here is that of masking. We prevent masking because the state can just basically say, we endorse this, but we cannot, we're going to be implementing everything in the future. basically means that we are attacking the problem right here at the root cause, the way we orient ourselves. Second of all, this leads into the male savior, where basically males are the ones that are going to be saying, look, we need to take a stance against rape. But no, we need to reorient ourselves, how we even look towards the field, how we even look towards oppressed bodies in the first place. Second advantage is safe haven. Uniqueness right now, what's happening is that women are the most persecuted refugees in Syria and the most persecuted minority groups. Little is classified the resolutional analysis about how all these laws are against these oppressed bodies. Little b is that at least we have 40% of referees have experienced assault as they travel throughout the country. Two, plans often target areas by most heavily populated. Planes often target areas most heavily populated by women. Little a is that Russian planes basically drop bombs that destroyed a UN aid convoy heading towards heading towards a women's home in September. Basically, also under this is that queer bodies and trans people are also discouraged from joining the military as they're not seen as physically fit or able to even operate within military standards. Is also extremely bad. So little b is that innocent places have been bombed. Hospital schools are primarily operated by these women and oppressed people because they're forced to stay at home. The link here is that one, the plan passes, and this alters the mindset in the post-fiat world because we specifically passed this action, our advocacy, to break down the militaristic mindset that targets women on these oppressed groups in specific. It's not only just about women, it's about people who are not going to be accepted within these social constructs here. This enables us to create safe havens for the oppressed groups in Syria specifically. So therefore, the impact here is that first of all, we do break down the patriarchy, we break down the Orientalist mindset that we have towards these bodies. Yes, I have time.
Do you defend your fiat impacts?
We defend the pre-theotic implications of our plan. That's basically what our two advantages are talking about. But we do defend both. But sorry. We do defend both.
Okay.
Yes. Is that all? Okay. Let's just done. For those reasons, please vote out.
Okay. Is everybody ready? Okay. Start time now. First is, A is the interpretation that affirmation must disclose the advocacy text during prep time if they're reading a critical affirmative. B is the violation. They didn't disclose their advocacy text. Yeah? Can you repeat? Oh, yes, sorry. The affirmation must disclose advocacy text during prep time if reading a critical affirmative. Okay, next are the standards. First is predictability. They can literally read any advocacy text, and we have no idea what they're going to be doing, especially at the point where they're defending pre-fiat level impacts. We really can't predict any of those impacts. Next standard is going to be and predictability is going to be key to what do I say? Fairness.
Fairness and education.
Okay. Okay, predictability is going to be key to fairness and education. Otherwise, we can't engage with them on the critical level. This is also going to be key because that's ontological violence. If we can't predict what they're going to be reading, then we can't it's really hard for us to engage with them on any of their substantive debate. Also, that means that that's probably going to be a link towards dogmatism because if at the point we can't they're denying us access to being able to clash with them. That means that they're also denying us our own personhood. Next to the standard is going to be limits because they can literally explore the topic to defend any sort of pre-fiat impact that they want, and we can't ever predict what those pre-fiat impacts are, which means that there's no way we can ever prepare against them. Next, voters are of education and fairness. That's A4. You drop the debaters.
Reading in terms.
prefer competing interpretations. The next is going to be that the interpretation. They must not use mindset fiat. B is a violation. The affirmation must not use mindset fiat. B is interpretation. B is a violation. They clearly use mindset fiat at the point where they're saying that they're fiating like everybody like changing their mind and whatever it was like.
To reject like
To reject the patriarchy. Next are the standards. First is what's the standard? What are the standards?
They like literally exploded like all around at the point in which like you can say I willed it and it happened.
Oh,
It's like,
okay.
pretty unfair.
Next to the standards, they explode all around because they can basically say that I willed it and they can make anything happen, in which case that's really unfair because that denies us all, there's, we literally cannot, wait, what do I want to say for this?
Like we can't interact with them and also strat skew.
Okay, we can't interact with them because there's also because there's also issues in terms of there's no way we can actually have strat skew. Next, topic specific education is really important because that means that we wait, do I want to read that?
Sure.
Okay, topic specific education matters because that means that we won't research into topic for education when they're reading into mindset fiat, which means that we can't ever predict that, which means that we that means that's disincentivizing us from looking for topic specific education. That's going to be a link towards education. Next, also, role playing is really good because that means that we have to first engage with the government in order to understand the power structures behind them. Fairness or voters are fairness in education. Drop the debaters. I don't know. The next topic is going to be the dissad is education, the escalation dissad. The United States currently Russian-U.S. relations are on the brink right now. Recently, ceasefires have talked, but the whole situation hasn't exploded yet. We see that because we're obviously not in war yet, which means that this situation is on a brink. The links are that Russia has explicitly said that they don't want to create a no-fly zone, which means that if they create a no-fly zone, because I think they're also defending some form of I don't know. But basically, if Russia say that they don't want a no-fly zone, that means that their plan kills all relations, which means that Russia escalates with impact.
Russia escalates like war.
Okay, war. You want to read a critical?
Also like them advocating for like the post-fiat means like they're justifying their plan, but if their plan causes war, that means like they're okay with this war and war's like bad because during wartime there's like scapegoating.
Alright, Shirley. Okay, that also spills over onto pre-fiat impacts because if they're okay with this post-fiat impact happening, that means that in the pre-fiat they're also complicit in allowing for these complicit in allowing for all of this massive death to happen. Go to the app. What response is called? Okay, you want me to know?
Just say like role playing good, answer like serial policy failure, bad and most bad.
Okay, serial policy
just like the down case.
Okay, serial policy failure doesn't happen. Why?
Huh?
Why does serial policy?
Oh, because like debate will be able to check back for bad policies, like we can evaluate the consequences of our actions and it checks back.
Okay, serial policy failure doesn't happen because debate means that we can always check back for the consequences of our action, which means that it doesn't happen. And what else?
Answer the theory spike. They say like matter of fairness and equity, but like at the point in which you literally give us no ground to debate on and theories are only offense, that's going to be like a huge vote against you.
Okay, so theory is what?
It's like you need to evaluate theory first because like this is literally our only offense.
Okay, you have to evaluate theory first because at the point where this is our only offense, that's pretty unfair. Is that the argument? Okay.
And then like heat of mark just like answer.
Is there anything else on the framework that I have to answer?
Just defend fiat.
Okay. Fiat is good because it means we role play, and that's the only way we can actually interrogate power structures. Okay. Go to the first advantage. They say that the plan passes, which means that people are able to reorient themselves and something like that. First, they can't mindset fiat people reorienting themselves or to in order to re-understand this, which means that there's really no reason why they need any access to all of their war escalating. Second, if you cross the impact on escalation, which means that what does that mean?
Like they defend war escalating, which leads to a form of oppression and scapegoating during wartime, which is really bad for them. It's turns their entire advocacy. Okay, the escalation via is going to turn the entirety of their advocacy because that means that they're complicit with war happening. Okay, and I don't know. Second, try to answer maybe the second advantage. Second advantage is also answer the DA.
Okay, they say that plans are going to be targeting areas in which which women are primarily in. First, the plan doesn't solve because they have to. Okay. Oh, actually, I guess I'll read a solvency on that. Basically, if they want to pass the plan, it requires the UN to also approve this. And basically, if they want the UN to approve this of a no-fly zone, that means that the UN also has to require a unanimous vote on this, and Russia is going to definitely veto this, which means that there's no fly zone that's actually going to be created, which means that plans are still going to be targeting areas in which women are primarily in, so no access to any of their impacts.
Question?
Yeah.
Do you grant us fiat to the fact that we're actually able to enforce no fly zone?
Well, okay, you can fiat NATO doing this, but you can't wanting to defend this, but you can't fiat Russia's saying yes on the Security Council. Okay. Well, I guess that's kind of it.
So the order will be
Framework on top.
the orders today, so then underneath that. Then the two advantages in order, and then the disadvantage. Okay. Everyone ready? Everyone ready? Time starts now. First on the framework there, they come up with a couple responses. Their first response is that theory should come first because it's our only offerings. First of all, it's literally not true. They bring up disadvantages. Probably another way they can win the round through disadvantages is not the only sense response. Second response here is that you're going to be battling inequality in the real world. In the real world, for the women who are suffering in Syria right now, for the oppressed bodies, for the queer bodies that are being suffering in Syria right now, over the 20 minutes of prep time that might be skewed. Also, I'm going to be responding to this on the theory level, but we're going to say that the fairness in the real world about social and distributive equity definitely outweighs any type of fairness that they're talking about because this is on a really this is on a really micro level, which probably means we're definitely outweighing. You're going to be evaluating our framework first because of the fact that we talk about real world fairness. Next, they talk about in response to serial policy here. They say that debate can check back for consequences, but it doesn't even matter if you only talk about consequences that happen post-fiat, because at the point where if you have a negative mindset, no one checks back for that negative mindset by running something that affects pre-fiat impact, that means you're going to continue making policies that might seem good in the short term, but ultimately cause detriment to oppressed bodies because of the fact that your mindset is never fixed. It doesn't matter if you have Congress people, if you have debaters go into Congress and passing so-called and passing policies that seem good on the surface, if the mindset behind them are racist, or racist or sexist, because that ultimately means they're probably going to collapse in the future and actually hurt the oppressed bodies that they were trying to solve, which means that you're going to have to evaluate pre-fiat impacts first, and serial policy failure is not checked back by debate in general. Next, they talk about how fiat is good. They give you the reason that role-playing good. First of all, we probably need this because we are also talking about post-fiat implications. We are talking about how governmental systems work. I'm going to be interacting with them on their solvency press, which also kind of goes into how international policy works. We definitely need this. Also, you can see that not interrogating things, not looking towards personal understanding is probably really bad, and which is why fiat is not necessarily always the best solution because of the fact if we don't interrogate pre-fiat implications, there's always going to be impetus to systems violence if we don't actually question the justification that come before. This is why soldiers in Vietnam were allowed to rape, murder, and kill thousands of civilians because they continue with their war project without actually interrogating the mindset that comes behind it. Also, you can see that if we only focus on fiat alone, this actually kills activism because of the fact that we can sit by the sidelines and let state actors do all the work, but incorporating personal understanding of how things like Vietnam protests started and change policies. Anything else? Okay, next on the theory, their interpretation is that the affirmation must disclose the advocacy tests during the prep. Our counter-interpretation is that the affirmation must only disclose whether or not they're running a critical advantage and if they're affirming the resolution. The affirmation must only disclose if they're running a critical affirmation and if they're affirming the resolution. They literally asked us during the round, and we told them we're affirming the resolution as a starting point, but we have the right to talk about pre-fiat implications as well. We're not going to give them our advocacy test because that's literally the equivalent of telling them a plan takes how we run a completely policy option. That's literally saying, yeah, we're going to be studying X amount of soldiers in X amount of region. That probably gives it actually way more ground. It's probably way more unfair than if we just told them yeah, we're going to have some pre-fiat impact, but we're also going to be debating the resolution as well. We think that's enough ground, so that's probably why I shouldn't be voting as a theory. More specifically on the standards, the first standard is on predictability. Like you can basically predict what we're running because we're still affirming the resolution. Just because we claim pre-fiat impact doesn't mean that we're going off the topic. Like, all our pre-fiat impacts have to do with things that are happening in the status quo, like having to do with the resolution. This means we're probably really predictable. A lot of your disadvantage probably still applies anyway because of the fact that we are debating the resolution. You talk about how it's key to fairness education, like we definitely need. We told you a lot about our strategy, like we could have just said, yeah, we're running a KF, but we didn't. We actually told you we're affirming the resolution as a starting point, which gives you a lot of ground because you can talk about disadvantages. You can also like just run theory about why this is bad, but you don't do that, which is probably a reason why you like you're the ones probably actually getting rid of your own ground in this debate round. Next, you talk about how this is ontological violence. Like we think this is completely untrue. Again, crossed by all my analysis, how you are literally able to make responses and you're able to make responses based on the information we gave you during prep time. Like you can't expect it to give you the literal text of our advocacies, like what's next, like telling you all of our links and all of our impacts and like every little bit of our solvency. There's no bright line. At the point where we literally have to give them like a plan text, that probably means they're actually gutting any affirmation plus because we have to cater to whatever the negative wants. You also say this like links to dogmatism. I did not get an explanation for this. You can probably cross-apply the same responses to ontological violence onto this point. Second, about limits, like they said you can't prepare and this explodes ground. Again, we affirm the resolution. This probably already limits the affirmation ground because we can only talk about pre-fiat implications in the way that they're related to the resolution, which means there's definitely no explosion of ground here. On voters, first of all, they talk about fairness education. You cross-apply framework argument that says real fairness probably outweighs also education is probably also more important in this round because we're talking about things that we're talking about oppressed bodies, which is something that uniquely needs to come in the debate space. Cross-fire framework arguments that say we have 7 minutes of unique office that we get to talk about these bodies and other forms of discussion that would be silent. Education probably outweighs fairness anyway in this round because education is for a lifetime. Fairness is only for the duration of a round. Also, you can see that debate is inherently unfair anyway because of the fact that you get the PMC and the PMR or you get the neg block. There's always going to be some sort of unfairness, which probably means you're going to be banked on education first anyway. Next, they talk about how you should be valuing this on competing interest. We think you should be valuing this on reasonability because otherwise, because theory is like basically a one-shot kill. If they win the fact that we literally have to give them like a plan check, that's probably not a reason why you should be voting for them. Probably a reason why you should be voting for reasonability because otherwise that justifies teams running lots of abusive theory. Next, they talk about drop the team off the argument. They give no analysis for why we should be dropped for running this argument. Yeah. It's probably better to vote on like actual abuse on like the actual argument they don't like versus the team. Next, on the second theory on mindset field, like literally we don't have mindset field. It's fundamentally misunderstand our advocacy where we talk about how we are affirming the resolution as a starting point to discuss the issues of feminism and the patriarchy within the scope of the resolution. We're not mindset fielding like all of you like, yeah, you all have to think a certain way. This is definitely not what we're doing. They misunderstand our advocacy on the standards on how it explodes ground. Like we're literally not exploding the ground when we tell you that this is in order to spark a discussion about the issue. If the discussion is among like both pre-fiat and post-fiat, like we're not telling you have to believe a certain way. We're just telling you we allow the space to happen. And then they don't interact with the second standard is how they don't interact with the arguments. Like that's definitely not true. Because of the fact that they are interacting with the arguments with the disadvantage where you are debating the resolution, strategy, topic-specific education, like all these things we need. Strategy, you can cross-apply all my responses on first theory. On topic-specific education, we literally read your statistics out of different articles in Syrian law. That's extremely topic-specific. We definitely need this. And about role-playing, cross-apply our analysis that like we probably need role-playing even to some extent. We also need to talk about other things in role-playing. And you can cross-apply all the under the responses. Onto our advantages. Basically, they talk about you can cross-apply all responses to mindset fiat, and when they talk about escalation and people, they talk about we fight against a mindset that causes war and violence in the first place to target women. These things are ultimately going to be solving the root cause. On their second dimension about safe spaces, they talk about how we have insolvency because we need the UN to prove this. Probably not going to affect our case because we are sparking a discussion. The discussion is the whole point of it. The discussion is part of breaking down the patriarchy. So even if this doesn't have the fact that we're bringing forth the rhetoric, probably needs to be solved anyway.
Also, like risk increases.
Also, the risk increases anyway.
Risk increases of solvency.
Risk increases of solvency. If we talk about on their disadvantage, you can see that we also solve the root cause of disadvantage because the whole reason for escalation is because of the violent mindset that comes from the patriarchy. So if we solve for the patriarchy by sparking this discussion, that means we're ultimately going to be solved for both.
Shells in order that they read, the DA and then case. And then case in order.
Sorry, order?
The shells in order.
So like half?
No, the shells in order they are read.
Oh, sorry.
They operate under the misconception that we were somehow able to not get skewed out of ground in this argument, and their entire thing was like, oh, we told them that we were using the resolution, we were able to create pre-fiat impacts. They make this somehow absurd argument about how, like, oh, what is next? We're going to tell them links and arguments. However, the thing here is that by telling us that, they still skew us out of completely out of ground. Specifically, when you say you can claim pre-fiat impacts, that means that you can literally run a number of critical arguments that we cannot prep out for against because there are literally so many. Look at the tournament. There have been so many arguments critical arguments that have been read in an AppK or in a KF, which means that there's no way we could have possibly prepped out. Like literally during Shirley and my prep time, we were writing shells to different possible advocacies you could have. We were also trying to find answers to different forms of critical arguments that we'd heard you've been running through the entire tournament. So we've literally been there's definitely strategy in this entire argument. And next
Question.
Yeah.
Doesn't the fact that we abide by the resolution limit the number of critical arguments we can run?
No, because you can literally run whatever critical argument. Literally every critical argument has some sort of the resolution. Like St. Vincent de Paul proved that pretty well last year. They were Nietzsche with an H-1B visa program. Like how did it work? I don't know. All right. Next. Next, I don't think they understand the ontological violence Because they are committing this type of abuse in round, they take the form as the oppressors in this. This ultimately turns their entire case because at the point in which you're the oppressors, that's going to take your entire advocacy. And in addition, the abuse that they're eliciting right now against the most proximal people, which is their opponents, us, in this round, means that all of their advocacy is completely taken. That's the ontological violence that we're talking about. They completely exclude us because they don't give us literally any ground to debate on. In addition, they say that somehow they set limits by saying that they can they set limits on somehow they disclosing that we're going to read a KF somehow is good. Again, there are no limits on this interpretation. You can literally read any sort of critical app when you're saying or any sort of argument when you're reading a critical app. Their entire thing is based around how they could have they were predictable. They are absolutely not predictable. That's the reason why. Those are all reasons why you should be preferring our. That's all reason why you should be preferring our interpretation. Go on to the voters. No, you should not be preferring reasonability because reasonability the only word they say here is this is a one-shot kill. However, at the point in which this is one of the only few ways that we can actually debate against this, and as you see, there's literally no other way we can, or there are very few other ways we can engage with them. This is going to be a reason why you need to be dropping the debater immediately. In addition, even if you buy the argument of dropping the argument is somehow better, if you drop the argument, that means they don't get access to this advocacy text, which means ultimately this gives them no solvency. You should really be voting on this theory shell alone. They skew us out completely and have completely destroyed the educational value of this round. And educational value is literally the only thing. They create one-sided knowledge and they created a one-sided advocacy. We're never able to clash against them. This ultimately creates an echo chamber, which they are always perceived as right because we aren't able to engage on any level with them, except for these theory shells and the one DA that we try to go for. Next on the next shell. Their answers here sound sound really similar to the earlier argument. However, so you can just cross-apply all our arguments. In addition, they say strategy answers. However, there's clear strategy. There's clear in-round abuse. That's another reason to be voting against them. You need to give us an advocacy text. That way, we can actually predict what sort of impacts you're going for. At the point in which you say you're only running a critical app, you can literally read any sort of arguments and impacts you want. All right, on the disadvantage, this is going to be another reason why you're going to be. No, not really. Next on the disadvantage, the only argument they make against the disadvantage is how sexism is the root cause. However, they can see the entirety of the uniqueness and the links about how Russia and the U.S. are in very tight relations, and this no-fly zone will send them over the brink. In addition, they say that somehow by increasing the top of the discussion as a starting point to talk about sexism is somehow going to solve for this first time frame. This is going to be happening immediately after the passage of the plan, so you're going to be endorsing. You're going to be buying this division. The second argument here is that specifically the second argument is that they don't actually get to solve this because a discussion does not mean you're all of a sudden going to be able to solve for the cause of the war between U.S. and Russia. Most of the links are conceded. You can extend the war impacts, you extend the links, and these war impacts are going to be really bad because during wartime there's a great amount of oppression, there's a great amount of scapegoating. You can see about how during wartime people are literally reduced to us against them, and they're literally reduced to people who can be expended for the state of their nation. These impacts greatly outweigh their entire advocacy because they say oh, we're going for sexual, at the point in which you literally create all other forms of oppression in your post-fiat world, and you're advocating for something like this happening in the post-fiat world, that's going to be really bad, because your advocacy, again, is tainted. You are complicit in allowing for all of these structural forms of violence to reoccur. Not just sexism. Sexism occurs when war occurs, but in addition, all forms of scapegoating and racism and other forms of oppression that are going to be created when war happens, they do literally no work on this. They only say they solve problems on framework. First argument on framework is that policy extent of my partner's argument on policy making matters. In addition, more arguments under this is that over 50% of policymakers were once debaters. In addition, the champion of education reform in the past 10 years was a really awesome policy debater. So what we can see is that our actions and consequences through our material advocacies in round 2 translate over to the real world when we're making policy. And that's going to be really critical because there's a point in which you might become a policymaker and you might become a policymaker who is going to justify war, and when this war creates all forms of repression reoccur because the war is obviously you've heard the impacts already. And when you create all of these, that's going to be really bad. That's going to make your entire advocacy go be non-solvent because you literally are saying, okay, we're going to start discussion on feminism, but it's okay for us to let war occur, and it's okay for us to watch all these other forms of repression happen. That's going to be really bad, and that's going to be another reason why their entire advocacy just makes absolutely no sense. Their discourse matters, their policy making matters, it all translates over. In addition, they make an argument about how fairness, how we literally have second DA to interact with them, but the argument isn't specifically that theories are only able, and that's why you need valid theory. It's theory is one of the few ways we can check back for their abuse. In addition, you can see this was really difficult for us to do, and we were limited to the very few strategies that we were really spread out during prep time to use. So we tried to pick out the shells that we could use and apply to this round. So at the point in which we literally are limited by their abuse to only a few arguments, and they don't give us ground to any other way to interact with them on the ballot, that's going to be another reason to be voting against them, and another reason why you should be validating the theory over the thing. Next is on solvency. There's no solvency. They don't get to fiat the UN or Russia saying that the UN is going to pass this. So ultimately, discussion does in the end, discussion does not lead to solving. In addition, their return case on whole violence taints their advocacy, and yeah.
Okay. It's going to be overview, theories, the disclosure theory, escalation, I'll start now. Overview to the round. First, you can go off of theory because it clearly shows that there's proximal abuse currently happening in round. They say that that their abuse is, or the way that they solve is going to outweigh because they're solving for the feminism or solving for harms oppression to women in the real world. But at the point where they can't show you any way where affirming the resolution is able to solve for that, which Ryan really articulates in the MO, that means that you're probably going to weigh the proximal impacts that are happening out of their own abuse in round first. Second, even if you go by theory, we can still engage on their level in terms of the DA. They're going to say that the fact that we can run a DA means that that they're not being abusive. But Ryan again makes the argument very clearly that even if we can run a DA, we're still severely limited. We probably would have been able to engage a lot better with them if they had disclosed the text, which means that even if we can run a DA, that still doesn't matter because education is still significantly a lot less than if we had known what they were going to run. Okay, go on to the theories, Shell. Okay, so basically, the main discussion that's coming out of here is that we're not saying that they have to disclose the plan text, but the main problem here is that because their advocacy text also has pre-field implications, and those pre-field implications are ones that we can't predict, which is going to be a main reason for why you can vote for us here. They basically said that it's going to give us too much ground, but no, because if we the fact that they can run pre-field impacts means that they're gaining too much ground because we have no idea what they can possibly run, which means that that's not giving us too much ground because we don't there's literally no way we can predict any of their impacts that they're going to be running, which means that if they're running a critical affirmative, they should be disclosing what their advocacy text is, because that means that that's the only reason we can gain access to defending against all of the a huge explosion of ground that they have. They say that there's no ontological violence, but the link to ontological violence here is specifically because they're exploding the amount of pre-fiat impacts, and it goes conceded that there's a lot of pre-fiat impacts that they're running, because that means that's going to be a link to why there's ontological violence here. That also is going to turn their case, because if they're the oppressor in this instance, then that means that there's no way we can ever evaluate that means that their advocacy is always going to be tainted. There's no reason why you can ever, that means their advocacy is always going to be tainted. Next, they see that, also onto this whole, like, education versus fairness thing. First, like, they see that they're educating us about oppression first. That's, like, a very, that impact is very, not articulated here at the point where, first, their abuse means that their advocacy is always going to be tainted, which means that their education is always going to be bad. Also, their education is going to be bad if it's always going to be one-sided because we can't engage with them, which means that even if they have education, that's not good education because their one-sided education means that we can't engage with them, which means that fairness is going to be the internal link to their education here. Yeah.
All of this articulation about how education should not come before fairness how education is not as good as fairness, and how our education is really bad.
And also the way we engage around all of this is new.
No, the education argument about how your education is tainted is in my echo chamber argument about how it's completely one-sided and we literally can't engage with you because you don't disclose to us your advocacy.
But like I'm just saying the specific cross application onto the underview level where you're talking about like my argument where I say education comes before fairness is new.
Judge's discretion.
Yeah, just say education outweighs.
Okay. Anyway, so they kill all education outweighs anyways. Go on to the dis side. They see that like the root cause of this is this woman being oppressed. First, Ryan's time frame argument is pretty good about how like war is going to happen immediately if they have this post-fiat, and the fact that they're advocating for this post-fiat world in which war is happening means that also is going to flow over onto the pre-fiat level, especially at the point where Ryan says that post-fiat impacts occur also in pre-fiat world because post-fiat specifically as policymakers because debaters are going to be policymakers. That means that our post-fiat advocacies also matter, which means that when they say that sexism is the root cause for this, if they cause war to happen first, that means that's going to turn all of their sexism impacts because war creates even more oppression because people are turned against each other. Any other arguments you want me to make?
No, just turns case.
Okay.
And like the fact that they advocate and allow this to happen means like you shouldn't be regarding their advocacy because like this happens now. Like they advocate for like they say it's okay for all this to happen as long as we say it's like we can discuss sexism, but obviously no, this outweighs greatly. Time for also do time for analysis like just like how this outweighs.
Okay.
Just do this outweighs. This outweighs their advocacy.
Okay, this outweighs their advocacy on a lot of levels because first they're just no guarantee for how their discussion is going to be able to solve like for the time because our arguments are always going to be happening first. That means that the fact that they're advocating for such a problematic position is going to mean that there's like severe pre-fiat impact considerations. And then case.
Yeah.
Okay, but.
Just like solvency and then say like discussion doesn't mean you solve.
Okay, alright. Did you make that argument?
Yeah.
Okay, they're going to go for the fact that their discussion is going to be solving for all of this like patriarchal impacts, but first, there's no reason for why discussion is going to be solving, especially if we're discussing a plan that's completely not going to happen, which means that there's really no reason why they're going to be gaining access to any of their like impacts about how discussing this is going to be leading to more or less oppression or something. Anything else you want me to say?
Wave theory over okay.
Okay, also wave theory over any of their critical impacts because first it's the most proximal impact and and there's really no reason for why they unless they can there's no solvency mechanism for how they're able to solve for oppression of every single woman in the real world, which means that this impact is happening. Our theory impacts are happening right now.
So, little overview. You may forward if you want to. Basically, just going to outline what I'm going to do in the rest of my Twitter speech. So, and then I'll go on to. I'll talk about theory. So, the two theories. Make responses to what was said in the next block, and then on their framework. Yeah, and then I'll get to case. Basically, within framework, I'll be talking about case, how it relates. Again, the overview, the theory, and then our framework, and then talk about case throughout. At the time. Alright, 3, ready? 3, 2, 1. The overview.
reorienting ourselves towards the real world impacts, they concede the fact that this is going to outweigh the abuse that happens within the 40-minute time within this round and also outside in the 20-minute prep period. They concede the fact that our real world impacts, which specifically stated in our framework, is what needs to be discussed right now, and any of that outweighs the abuse that has happened within this round. Let's go on to the theory. Let's go on to the interpretation. Let's go into what they're saying. It's not as bad as they say it is. They have a disadvantage. They have responses to our solvency. And also, you cannot drop the team. This argument is uniquely bad because we turn potential abuse here because your interpretations right here that we can't have mindset fiat, we have to disclose our advocacy text. That mindset literally justifies the logic behind us having to disclose our entire case. Meaning the potential abuse over there is much greater than what actually happened within this round. The potential abuse, if we gave them our advocacy before this round, the extent that there is no bright line to what could have happened. They dropped this and meaning that they could have had infinite neg ground here. Meaning voting on potential abuse, you vote more towards the affirmation side here. Literally, they're saying drop the debater. Do not penalize us for not wanting to give you every single argument on our flow. That is not how debate should work and they concede the fact that debate is uniquely key to checking back for all of these views. Also, they also concede that debate is already inherently unfair and that real-world analysis outweighs here. And we still talk about the scope. We still talk about topic-specific literature. We still talk about that within our plan text. You can even look towards the fact of our resolutional analysis. We are being topic-specific here, and you still run a disadvantage. You still run this, meaning at the end of the day, the theory does not come down to this debate because of the potential abuse that could have happened for the affirmation. For those reasons, you'd be airing us on theory. Anything else? Okay, let's move on to the framework about how key things that they drop here. They concede
on the theory, ontological violence doesn't happen.
On the theory, ontological violence doesn't happen.
Yeah, when there's no abuse.
When there is no abuse right now. So
they don't delineate a bright line.
They don't delineate a bright line about what the abuse actually is. They just
they don't delineate.
They don't delineate how much we are supposed to disclose. Yes,
what's next?
What's next after the advocacy text? They could basically just say, oh, well, that's unfair. We want some more stuff, right? So the potential abuse, there's more for the affirmation. Not the frameworks. Basically, they're saying that role playing is good, like defending fiat. They concede the fact that fiat is traditional debate is bad. Fiat is illusory. The real world implications, that is what we are trying to solve for within this round. They're basically they're saying that policy making matters at the point where policy making has basically failed us, and also contributed to serial policy failure, where we basically look at all of what's the atrocities happening in the world and not reorienting ourselves towards what's happening. Yeah.
The LOR literally says that
the
there's
LOR
a plan that doesn't happen.
Yeah, the LOR literally says that they are discussing a plan that won't happen. It probably means that their disadvantage doesn't matter within the end, right? So on here, also they're saying that vote for them to check back on abuse. First of all, we do not limit to you. There are infinite many advantages that we could have run, infinite many counterplans that they could have run. You say that role playing is good, and you could have leveraged that within this round too, but you don't do that. You just say that. So meaning over here, you could have had way more educational value within this round, and we try to, we do give you topic specific education here. We do increase the educational value of this round. We increase strategical thinking here. Also, role playing doesn't matter unless your mindset is bad. They concede that over here, how debate is a unique space where we can question all of this. Yeah.
The argument that role playing is bad and methodology is pretty new.
Oh, in my MG, I said it doesn't matter if debaters become Congress people if they're still racist and sexist.
Yeah, so that's just an extension of why role playing doesn't matter.
I don't have that on my flow.
Okay, well. Okay. All right. Third of all, how to evaluate. We use the specific articulation here is that on the fifth framework here, we say how to evaluate. Theory needs weighted impacts to, and we define fairness as social and distributed equity. At the point where we're talking about real world impacts that are happening to these people outside in the real world right now. Oh yeah. Also, what? and all the solvency here, meaning that we are the ones that are actually doing here. It is try or die for the affirmation. There is only a risk that we can solve for all these sexist mindsets that are out here. Fiat is illusory. This means that we can't stop Russia from war right now. The only way we can have a risk of solvency is if we solve the root cause, just so we can stop serial policy failure. That is the reason why it's a try or die for the affirmation, to reorient ourselves. That is the reason why we should be voting for the affirmation. Thank you.